Hello and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Nazar Labunets with Ataccama, and today I have the pleasure of talking to Aravind Jagannathan, or Jag, VP and CDO of Single Family at Freddie Mac. I was thinking, I read this interesting statistic that 62% of CDOs report that their role is misunderstood compared to the other C-suite executives. Does that make sense to you? Does that resonate?
I've heard the same in various panels and conferences. It may not resonate as much to me or in my local world, but I think the challenge that has always occurred, going back to the first question, is what is the value that you're generating? And when you think about data, and as I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, data for some executives or form is not touchable, right? I know what a CFO, I'm in charge of finance. CTO, I'm in charge of the tech. CIO, building out overall, and you can just go down the line. People can immediately define those roles. And if you walk around a lot of folks and you say, okay, hey, look, data, people's are our most important asset. Data is the lifeblood of any organization. People, yeah, that makes sense. But then you say, okay, what does the CDO do? And they'll give you various answers. I think this is a natural evolution that if you think in 2006 or 7 when the first CDO started, and 15 years later, now you have organizations and CDO magazine, supportive of bringing everyone together. I think it's just still figuring out what are you truly responsible for and the value generation. It's not just about tech. It's about the business value and then how you bring in this all together. And I think you'll start seeing hopefully less confusion.
Right.
Some of that I think is also organizationally where the CDOs reside. I think also creates some of that confusion. But for me, I think I've been fortunate that management has been very supportive and understanding in terms of what the value will bring to the table and the commitment that they're giving in terms of budget and support. Because as you want to generate quick value, I can tell you most CDOs are working on a multi-year plan across the board, and you need that commitment to really eliminate pain points and derive that value prop that we've talked about.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree. I was actually just writing like a couple of articles on CDOs, and a lot of them touched on this, on the value and the ROI and all of this. And specifically about the misunderstanding, I think potentially if CDOs in some cases could communicate better what they do, right? Because you do all of this great work, right? You're putting on the bedrocks, then you are doing analytics, you're doing modernization. But the more people know about it, the better, I think, right? And not all organizations are that empowered like yours.
And I agree with 100% saying. I think it goes back to that value prop, because if you can't show how you're moving the business forward, how you're helping to support not only current but future needs, and then how does that tie to overall the strategy at the top of the house? That's the line of sight I think CDOs can help support. And then it becomes, okay, this is not an esoteric project. By doing X, I'm delivering Y, and that Y is part of your scorecard or whatever objectives that you have.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. As long as it delivers some business value, it contributes to some important projects, then the value is there. It seems that in Freddie you have the distributed kind of CDO organization, right? That you have CDOs in different lines of businesses, right? When would you recommend this model? Is it for big organizations like Freddie, or do you see this working elsewhere?
Either way, now in terms of for Freddie, we do have an enterprise data office that brings all the CDOs together and ensures in terms of our adherence to standards and compliance and consolidates all our metrics. And I think it provides that one voice, right? But I think whether you call it a centralized federated model, it's really understanding data is tied to your people, process, and technology. And I would advocate that it's no different than operation. If you are a federated model in terms of your process, and where the data ownership and consumer reside, CDO should be next to all those folks. If you're a centralized COO function, right, then yeah, it makes sense to have a centralized, because you're tied again. Data is a byproduct of those people, process, and technology. I think I don't see there's a right or wrong answer. I think it's that data should be a component of your overall organizational model. If you're federated, data should be kept accordingly. And if you believe you're more of a centralized model, that's okay too. But I don't see it one way or the other in terms of success. That you need to be having the seat at the table where your data ownership and consumers reside.
That makes sense. That makes sense the way you described it. Yeah. Speaking of, again, coming back a bit to modernization and innovation, are there any new frameworks or innovations you're looking to implement right now? Do something new different?
There's always, I always laugh, there's always changes occurring, right? Nazar. And so I think in terms of framework, first and foremost, for us is the CDMC, the Cloud Data Management Capability that the EDM Council launched. I was part of and supported the development. And I if I look back on it in terms of when I think about CDMC as a framework, best practices around data governance, privacy, security for organizations adopting the cloud. And what was unique about that was it wasn't just one cloud provider. We had Azure, Google, Amazon, all participating with providers, right? And so if you think about maturity assessment, and we use DCAM, for example, CDMC is a natural evolution and try to get certified as you move to the cloud. So from a framework standpoint, we're going through our assessment this quarter. And it's something that I truly believe that as you look at your data maturity, going back to that defensive side, CDMC is critical to ensure that you're certified so that as you're moving to the cloud and you think about modernization, that you're meeting what I call industry standards and a framework accordingly. Innovation, I think innovation occurs across, again, our landscape, and whether it be in our sourcing, servicing, or securitization space. The modernization what we're trying to do is part of that innovation. So as we're thinking about meeting our mission, making home possible, and looking at more potential new products or needs for our customers, innovation, if I think about our data space, that whole modernization of that ecosystem is, again, the bedrock for various innovative needs that we're trying to support our business partners with.
Never compromise the mission, whatever you're doing. Right. There is one topic I want to learn a bit more about, and that's, the importance of data management before, during, and after M&As, right? Mergers and acquisitions. It seems that you have been involved in a couple during your career. How would you describe there's some important steps you need to take, like before you do an M&A, right? For two data intensive companies.
Yeah. So clearly, Freddie is not going through an M&A. And I could speak about my previous history before. If I take a step back in terms of then, let's leave the M&A for outside of an equation, but you go back to data is going to be a key component of how to consolidate any organization. And it goes back to what I said before about where is my data and can I trust it? And how is it being protected and what do I have? Then I think it's going to be the natural evolution of looking at your technology and then what's similar and everything else about it. How you catalog, how you have your governance capability is going to be critical for any of those actions. Because you're going to need to bring your data sets and avoid duplication, right? Because ultimately, how do you define specific elements? Each organization may have done it differently. That's going to be part of that normalization and goes back to spending the time, right? Now, from a process standpoint, making sure that there are milestones and roadmaps and that you're not short-circuiting or devaluing that important function, because everyone wants to move to I need to consolidate my databases, and as such, and as you think about it, even from a cloud, the best analogy I can give, folks are very concerned when we first modernized, and less so at Freddie, but we hear in the industry, people wanted to avoid creating a data swamp, right? The data lake became the swamp, and then that's how you started. Now everyone's like, wait a second, whether it be mesh or fabric, and how do I create the marketplace? All these terminologies have come in the last few years, right? Because everyone just said, I'm just going to lift and shift. And suddenly I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I really have. And I think that's what you want to avoid, right? So the same way in the cloud journey, you wanted to avoid that swamp, the same approach. So I think the M&A is almost going from a legacy world to the cloud world. What are all the steps that you need to do? Be diligent accordingly. So in our case, before anything comes into the cloud, every data is registered, right? So it's part of our data, going back to that bedrock. Our governance is the first step before anything comes in. So that when we know you need to unlock, everything's been protected and meeting our standards. Similar, I would say, because again, it's been a long time. I would think you would follow that for any type of consolidation.
Makes sense. Thank you. Let's say somebody is thinking, about getting started with data governance. What would your tips, recommendations be for getting started? Like number 1, number 2, number 3.
I would say number 1, you got to know where you are. You can't figure out where you need to go if you don't know where you can. Be very introspective and start that, I call that DCAM, that data capability assessment model, maturity model, across each of the paradigms, whether it be from having the strategy, quality, governance, etc. Be very open and start there, because that gives you a clear roadmap as to what your strengths are and what the areas of opportunity. 2, then going back to engaging your business and product stakeholders. What's important among those variables that there's, and I think what happens is folks originally start with data governance, and it's viewed almost like a tax for some folks, right? It's I got to do it, but do I really want to? Flip the paradigm, like when you're saying, here's the value by having strong governance or strong a data governance program. Here's the value that we're generating. Going back to talking to those business and product stakeholders. And then 3 is having those metrics and indicators tied to your strategy, because again, it's not, you need to show quick value, right? If you're going to start a program, this can't be something 18, 24 months later, here's what we've done. You're going to need to show something in smaller increments, but tie it to that this is a multi-year commitment.
Well, Jack, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me today. And please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews.